We've got some new music for your iPod. Are you ready for this? Huey Lewis and the News first charged onto the charts back in the 80s. And with the release of their new album, Soulsville, it's easy to see why these guys are still around 30 years later. Audra caught up with the lead singer at the Gramercy in New York City.
You're the kind of know-it-all who want everything your way.
My managers suggested you guys ought to do a tribute, the Memphis soul music tribute record. We thought, well, that's a good idea. And so, although we were a little bit wary, because it's not to be trifled with some of these songs. Some of them shouldn't be redone, obviously. So we were careful about it.
If you don't give a heck about the man with the Bible in his hand.
We actually grew up on this stuff, believe it or not. Although we're white suburban kids from Marin County, California, with a backdrop of psychedelia, we loved KDIA, was our local station, which turned out to be the one and only sister station of WDIA in Memphis. So when everybody else was listening to Grateful Dead, we were listening to James Brown. But then we went on to have a kind of a rock and roll career and so on.
A rock and roll career that's lasted more than 30 years with mega hits like The Heart of Rock and Roll and The Power of Love, we all remember from the hit film Back to the Future. Well, Huey Lewis also starred on Broadway in Chicago and sang with Gwyneth Paltrow in the movie Duets.
And if you want it, you got it forever.
His musical roots remain deeply planted in the sounds of Memphis.
I was a black music snob until I went to college and joined my first sort of fraternity band and had to play, the reigning sort of FM top 40. And at that point, I realized that although I preferred to listen to some types of music as opposed to others, all music was fun to play. But my favorite music has always been soul music.
In fact, the band cut the album at Ardent Studios, where a lot of the original songs were made.
So we're right in the heart of all this stuff. And so I reckon that if it was going to fly, if we could pass metal with these guys, I figured we'd do okay. And it turned out to be the case, actually.
Black man, born free. At least that's the way it's supposed to be.
This really was a labor of love. We're not going to sell 1 million of these. First of all, we listened to stacks like forever, all the collections, and then we all brought our favorites in and we voted on, and then we settled on batches of 5, and we worked up 5 at a time, and until we had 20. We cut 20 things and 14 appeared on the record. But it was just so much fun to do, and it was sort of the antithesis of the way we started out recording, because Sports, which is seen as a kind of a bar band record, is actually assembled piece by piece. We created those performances, if you will, in the studio. This record was anything but. It's completely captured in the studio.
Huey Lewis says that he wouldn't really change his sound if the band started out today.
We'd definitely be a jam band, because that's kind of where we came from. In the 60s, we're really the union of 2 different bands called Soundhole and Clover that we all grew up together. We're from the same neighborhood. And those 2 bands were jam bands, really. And by that I mean blurring musical styles and improvising and so on.
And Huey Lewis keeps on jamming with his bluesy sounds of Soulsville.
The goal, I now realize for us, was to be able to play our own music and have people show up. And knock on wood, 32 years later, that's the case. So, and I decided sort of 10 years ago, in fact, one of my Broadway counterparts told me, Deb Monk, who played Mama in Chicago, was a wonderful actress and a good friend, said, 3 things. She says, either it's money, or it's a career move, or it's creative. Well, there isn't any money and there isn't any career moves anymore, so I just make creative choices.
You can never touch the sky, 'cause your roots are in. Oh, yeah.
Wow, they still sound great, don't they? It's nice to hear that they're not driven by money. By the way, when Huey Lewis played at the Gramercy, fans of all ages were treated to many of the songs off the new album, Soulsville. And the group also, of course, played a long encore of oldies, including a signature a cappella song that everyone knew the words to.